Welcome, everybody. For those of you whom I've not met perhaps before, I'm Valerie Creelman. I'm the RVP for the Canadian region, and we've had an amazing group of people planning the session for you this afternoon, including Leanne Churek, joining us from the Sawyer School of Business, who's helping us stage manage today's event, and her assistant Lily, who's also there. Maybe give a wave, Lily. We also have Paula Lentz, our VP for the Midwestern region, joining us, and also Kristen Getchell has been instrumental in setting up this, and we have many presenters here today from her region, the US Eastern region, and so I'm so excited about this session that we have organized for you today. This launches the first of a series of collaboratively put together sessions focusing on tech in business communication. And I don't think there's a better way for us to begin than to try and make sense of all the chatter out there about ChatGPT. And so I'm really grateful to Amy Newman and her team of presenters that you see there on the slide in front of you today, who are going to help us make sense, or at least begin to make sense of this very, I guess you could say, another tech disruptor and a phenomenon that we are just trying to get our heads and minds and research strategies behind. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to you, Amy, so that you can introduce the panel and set the terms of engagement for our 1 hour session today.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Valerie. Really appreciate your organizing this, and Suffolk University for hosting us today. Yeah, obviously there is a lot of attention on ChatGPT and increasingly other AI tools. So we wanted to make some space for at least the 5 of us to see how we could help faculty, essentially. That's why we wanted to schedule it early in the semester. I'm glad that worked out. So we could talk about how to use this and other AI tools in our business communication classes. There is a lot to talk about. We put together this agenda. We won't spend a lot of time assuming that people pretty much know what's going on, but Christy will start us off with a brief overview and some implications for business communication. Then Rita will talk about implications for the industry, kind of outside the academy, to frame what's happening there. We'll spend most of our time talking about assignments. Abram is going to take that section, and also thinking about how ChatGPT and other tools can actually support students in the writing process. I know there are a lot of fears and concerns, and many are justified, but how can we use this in a positive way? I'll talk about using AI for faculty support to help us do our jobs better, and then Lance will close on syllabus and assignment language that you might consider in your classes. It's a lot, and we have an hour. We're not going to get to everything, I'll tell you that right now. So you're welcome to use chat throughout. We also set up a Google Doc with some links that we've curated. You're welcome to post links and ideas there. I think Leanne's going to put that in the chat. Yeah, great. Thanks a lot. And there's more to come. The 5 of us are planning a conference presentation for ABC. We'll put a proposal in for that for October. You probably received a survey from Peter Cardin and his team, and they'll also, I'm sure, do a presentation. And if you don't know already, I don't know that notices went out yet, but the Business Professional and Communication Quarterly is doing a special issue. So that's another opportunity for people to contribute. So a lot more to come. Let's hear from the team. And yeah, I'll ask people to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about your interest in AI. Abram, you want to start us off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My name is Abram Anders. I'm an associate professor of English at Iowa State, and I'm the director of our Director of Communication Innovation. I'm really excited about AI and writing. I'm currently just proposed and had approved a course for artificial intelligence and writing that will be focused on all the diverse ways that we can use AI in the writing process across all the different stages and different workflows and different domains and practices. And I'm really looking forward to working with students as we figure out how best to use these tools and integrate them into our workflows.
Hello, I'm Lance Cummings. I'm Associate Professor of Professional Writing in the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. And AI was kind of a side project actually for over a year or so, doing research in the creator economy, basically people who are creating content direct to their audiences and making a living doing it, which has skyrocketed since COVID. And so I was just playing around with AI and techniques that or would be helpful for content creators. And now that side gig is becoming a major focus of mine. And I just started teaching. I experimented with AI in my classes last semester, and then this semester I'm teaching AI and the art of digital storytelling. So using storytelling as a way to help students explore the technology and develop a sense of AI literacy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy McDowell. I'm a senior lecturer in management marketing communication at Cornell University. I started looking at AI a few years ago related to the integrated marketing communication and the messaging implications related to artificial intelligence. And I'm excited about ChatGPT. And I've also, like Lance, have started implementing some activities into the classroom to just see how I can best support the students and show them different ways to use the tool.
I'll tell you about my interests. I was at Cornell University. Also, I retired from teaching a year and a half ago. So now my focus is primarily on faculty support. I do have a textbook, Business Communication and Character. I maintain a blog still, and I'm active in ABC on the board and finance committee.
And I'm Rita Owens from Boston College. I teach in the Carroll School of Management. I'm a longtime technology executive and business communication teacher, so this is right up my lane. And so I'm very interested in incorporating technology in teaching of writing and really preparing students for what they're going to encounter in industry. And this is the moment.
Great. Thanks. I think we'll start with you, Christy, then.
Sounds good. So we wanted to just acknowledge initially that everyone probably attending this session has kind of this baseline understanding of ChatGPT. So instead of going into some of those details, I wanted to provide you a little bit fun facts about AI. So in October of 2022, ironically, a Forbes article titled "The History of AI in 33 Breakthroughs, the First Thinking Machine," traced the evolution of AI and is a really good entry point for our discussion today. The article, much to my excitement, began with the histories of AI, that it started with Homer. And Homer's description of immortal gods actually learning how to do things. It then moved to talking about human beings and creativity and innovation, and referenced certain points in history about how when things were sparked, when creativity was exciting, or people were focusing on that. Specifically addressing the 14th century poet and theologian Lowell and the 17th century philosopher Leibniz. It then ended with the modern times in this notion of the thinking machine. And there's a quote from the article, I think this is relevant. It said, I quote, "This is when being rational was replaced with being digital." So we see this fast forward, and in 1955, we have the first AI workshop proposal. And as the Forbes article stated, the founding document of the discipline itself in 1955, it stated that it, or AI, is based on the conjecture that every aspect of learning or any other feature intelligence can, in principle, be so precisely described that a machine can be made to simulate it. Fast forward 67 years, on November 30th, 2022, again, a month over that first article, ChatGPT was launched. We've seen over the past 2 months a consistent growth in its daily worldwide visits on OpenAI's website, as well as ChatGPT's platform. And this is really why we wanted to start having this conversation. Just to note that in the first 5 days of ChatGPT being launched, it had over 1 million users. By January 2023, it had 100 million users. And according to a CNBC article that I found, it talked about how January 31st, whether New Year's Eve or not, was the biggest day for ChatGPT. And on that day, it hit a record of 28 million visits. This is up 165% to the month prior. For comparison, the article noted that it took TikTok 9 months to reach 100 million users and Instagram 2.5 years to reach this 100 million. As of February 4th, we're still looking at a daily usage of 24 million users, active users. And so with this, we'd like to move our conversation or chat about ChatGPT, and we're going to look at starting with the implications for industry, and Rita's going to take us in that direction.
Well, thanks, Christy. My birthday is November 30th, so I knew things were aligning finally for me. And so I want to talk to you a little bit. I've been reading a lot, we all have, but I want to give you headlines, right? We're all into headlines. And just to kind of give us a sense of how industry is looking at this. After all, you know, we are in a very unique position as people who are academics and care a lot about academic integrity. We care a lot about teaching, writing, and critical thinking, but we're also business proponents because we're putting our students out into the business world. And so I've been thinking a lot about how we bring those two together and how we bridge the gap. And I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about that. So I've curated some headlines for you. And just like ChatGPT, I'm often incorrect. So let's see how I do. But this was from my brain and my brain alone today. So industry is currently dealing with the disruption just like we are, and trying to really understand what to do with this tool and how to use the tool today. And we know certainly that, you know, one of the quotes this week that I read was, it's great for ideas, but it's not great for facts. And that is going to be short-lived, but it is the case today. And so any of us who are using it really need to be aware of that. And this is what industry is concerned about right now. It's a research test bed right now. So anything that anyone puts into any of the AI tools that we're talking about, that information and that data and that search belongs to the company. And so there were lots of warnings about it. So we're living in that environment, as is industry. Microsoft had invested $1 billion and then quietly $2 billion more, and has now committed to 10 billion more for OpenAI. And when we're talking about something that needs 10 billion more, that says to me it's not finished. And so we're in that situation in terms of what's happening. We've seen this week that Microsoft incorporated ChatGPT in Bing. You can sign up if you'd like to be on the waiting list for that. And what that's going to mean is that the search engine Bing will allow you to move directly into ChatGPT. We know that Google on Wednesday announced Bard, nice name for us, but announced Bard and failed pretty miserably on one of the questions, and $100 billion of stock went right down the tubes. So this is dramatic. And it is changeable, and we are right in the middle of this exciting time. Industry is treading lightly. I've been doing a sort of informal poll with some of my former students of what's going on with them in industry, and they've told me, and I've read, and we've got some documentation here in the article the articles we have on chat. but PricewaterhouseCoopers has said no client use. We don't mind if you use it to find out information, but nothing can go to a client. Accenture very similarly saying, we don't want to pass anything along to clients that's been created in that way. And they were talking about written materials. KPMG is having some people go through legal in order to use it. So it's quite in flux, just the way we're trying to come to grips with it. But that's going to change, and we all know that, because industry is eagerly awaiting for proprietary tools, and Microsoft will offer them, that will offer the ability for a company to use it in their private space, meaning that, let's say you're in a consulting engagement and you've got data on that engagement, you'll be able to go up against that data as a company in an enclosed environment and produce rich materials from that information. And so that it won't be all public when it comes to that. And companies will embrace it. And our students are going to have to use it in order to produce those materials. So right now it's very public, but it's going to, we know it'll enclose. Because here's why industry wants it. It is going to be great at project management. There's no question about that. Keeping track of anything and what the data are around what all those activities are. It's going to produce high quality reporting, routine communications, coding, tracking, curating materials, all of that, a great benefit. That doesn't mean people aren't going to be involved, but it is definitely going to be an assistant. And that's what industry is looking for, because we know how time consuming it is to create those materials. We teach that. We know what that means. So there's a crux that we're at the crux there. So I think everyone's waiting for the proprietary interface, and we know students are definitely going to use this on the job. So I'll leave it there.
Well, I think I'm next, and I'll be talking to you all about using ChatGPT in assignments and other exercises. One of the things I think is fascinating about ChatGPT is the first time that folks go to it, it's very much, I think, like the first time you do photography. For those of you who've ever been in a room where you dip your sheet in the acid and they watch the image emerge, and it's just a moment of astonishing excitement. And that same magic happens when people enter a prompt into ChatGPT and get a written result out, right? But just like photography, that moment of developing a photo does not exhaust the process of photography. And in fact, there's a lot of other things that go into good photography. So the first thing that I would like to suggest to you as you think about how to use ChatGPT as a teacher, to use it in learning, to use it in writing process as a professional, is to think about all the different stages of the writing process and how ChatGPT can plug in at different moments of that process. In order to do that, I'm going to illustrate with a few examples, and I'll be sharing these links afterwards. So I'll move a little bit quickly, but I'll be sure to share. Oops. You move out of my way. Thank you. So the first thing we can think about is how to use ChatGPT at the level of an inventional stage or a pre-writing stage. And one of the things that it's really good at is helping us brainstorm ideas. Here, one of the people I'd love to follow who's written really well about this topic is Ethan Mollick, who is an entrepreneurship professor at the Wharton School. And he shows and demonstrates how you can use ChatGPT to invent a lot of ideas by playing with constraints, by interviewing the AI, give it a persona or a role, and it will actually, if you tell it who it is and what its expertise is supposed to be, its answers will relate to that expertise. Or to just push yourself to develop more and more ideas and build and build and build on what you're working on. He has some really great examples for how to use this for entrepreneurship, but we can use this across many different domains. Now, of course, you can do it this way. You can do arguments, counter arguments, basic research, a lot of different applications for pre-writing. But the next thing that you can do is start to think about how to use it for draft work. And here, Ryan Watkins, someone else who's written really well in the early days about AI, has some suggestions. And two that I think are really worth drawing attention to are the idea of a prompt competition. And what this really orients students to is the recognition that when you're working with ChatGPT and AI, it's not just about telling it what to do. You actually have to have a pretty sophisticated sense of what you want to do in order to get a good result. And by making it a competition, you can challenge students to really begin to engage with curiosity how you accomplish that. Ryan also suggests a way we can think of it as a revision tool, where we have it draft a complete result for us, and then we have students go back and research it to find out if it was correct, come up with the counter arguments to improve it. And again, another way to introduce students to the limitations of ChatGPT and to think of it as a starting point and not a replacement for their own capacities. As we continue, draft work, a big thing that we want to learn how to do is how to engineer prompts. One of the things that I firmly believe about AI is that it makes our expertise as communicators and instructors and as professional communicators more, not less valuable. One of the things that we see, if you look at how professional writers such as marketers, knowledge creators are using these tools, is they're developing incredibly sophisticated approaches to how they create their prompts. I'll give you a couple examples. Here is from Rob Lennon, who's someone who's an early thought leader in the marketing space. And he gives an example of how he creates an analyst in the box. And he uses this formula of a mega prompt that assigns the ChatGPT a role. Not only do they have a role, who they are, a set of knowledge that they know about, traits that define their approach, but then and only then do we get to a task, and he breaks out the output and format characteristics that he's looking for. So this is a great example of essentially a very sophisticated analysis of rhetorical situation is going in before we even create the prompt, and then we're outputting. We can go even further if we start to integrate things like mental models. So some folks, especially in marketing, have started to develop prompts that are about implementing specific techniques that we know, whether they're logical, psychological, messaging, rhetorical, and using those. And again, imagine if you were creating a marketing message for a service or product, and you could quickly prototype messages using a number of different strategies and integrate the best elements of each. One other thing that we can do, and this fits with the idea of using a ChatGPT as a interlocutor that can help us develop and refine ideas, is you can really think about all the different roles it can play to help you in your process, whether at the inventional or drafting stage. And lots of folks have come up with great models for how to teach it to enact these roles. So if that kind of gives an overview of the pre-writing and writing stages, another element that we might look at is how we can work with revision. And here is where folks have really unveiled a really superpower of ChatGPT, is that if you have text that's logical, well-written, following your messaging strategy, you can use ChatGPT to really inflect the tone and style of it in sophisticated ways. Here you'll see some examples: persuasive, informative, humorous, emphatic, concise. But also we've seen people do this kind of approach where they say, write it in the styles of The Atlantic or the New York Times, or write it in the style of XYZ. Another cool thing that folks have done is they've had it reverse analyze their own style. They put in their own text and said, analyze this text. What have you learned about how I write? What are the features you would use to write a text using my style? And that can be very revealing, and or it can be a great way of creating a role for ChatGPT to write like yourself on your behalf. So this is a really cool way you can think about it. Another big application here would be if you have folks who have English language learning backgrounds or English as the second language, this can be a great way of not only helping them improve particular aspects of their writing, but also to become more aware. You can have it analyze and suggest the changes rather than simply making them, or even categorize the kinds of errors that are being made. Now, the last thing I want to hit on very briefly is broader uses of the AI and learning process. Here's a new article out by Ethan Mollick and his collaborator Lilik Mollick. And they talk about three big things that ChatGPT and large language model tools can help us do. One, improve transfer. Two, break the illusion of explanatory depth. And three, help students critically evaluate explanations. This paper has detailed working throughs of how you can do that, but I'll give you one example. One of the things that it has suggests is that you can have ChatGPT create an instruction or a guide to a complicated process, and then have students research it, and they can find the gaps, the places it breaks down, where additional information is needed. And it's a great way of introducing them to a concept in a way that doesn't ask them to replicate textbook knowledge, but become independent researchers who themselves are responsible for verifying and evaluating the information. Hence, it's deep learning rather than some types of superficial learning we might associate with textbook and quiz type learning formats. Another compelling model for how it can aid the learning process comes from this example. This is from an institute that was held for advanced AI writing. And one of the points this article makes is that all the participants came from interdisciplinary backgrounds. So they had different levels of expertise with different aspects of the programming languages and conceptual architectures they were working with. And what they found that people were doing was using ChatGPT as a study partner. In this point in the presentation, they're talking about a concept I'm not familiar with. I can quickly research that rather than stopping and asking a question. I can just figure this out for myself while others move on. And it allowed these interdisciplinary folks to come together and plug in the gaps in their learning and move very quickly. And they were able to prototype some really sophisticated AI tools. And then, of course, not only that, but the AI helped them draft the code and correct the code and run the code. So a great example of where ChatGPT can help not just individuals, but groups learn more quickly together and plug gaps in their expertise. Last example I wanted to share is this one. Not only can it help us learn, but it can help us develop learning materials. So this is from Dr. Philippa Hardman, and she shows how you can create a prompt that will actually go from your lecture notes and create not just multiple choice quizzes, but multiple choice quizzes that rely on progressive pedagogical principles. So here she uses the principle of common assumptions that are not actually showing understanding. So one that comes from science is that people commonly have a mistaken sense of how gravity works. And so the questions are designed to trip you up and help you realize where you may have misconceptions that can be corrected. Great example here. I'm going to be trying that out soon. Last thing I want to share is this. I've just proposed my artificial intelligence writing course. And the way that I'm approaching this is I want students to understand the history of AI, how these models work. I want them to be able to analyze the ethics of using these technologies in both workflows and in final authored works, as well as finding different types of tools, evaluating them, using them, purposes, genres, media, as well as learning those techniques of prompt engineering, which are so crucial. So I'm really excited about this, and I'll look forward to working with all of you as we figure out how best to use these AI tools in our communication process. I think that brings us pretty closely to the end of this section. We did have the idea we'd like to talk briefly here about ChatGPT, about detection tools. Rita was going to say a word about that, and Christy was going to say something about using these tools for formulating arguments and finding evidence. Rita? Mike, Rita.
Rita, Mike.
I got it. ChatGPT, turn my mic on, right? Know when I'm gonna need my mic on. I want to talk about how I am incorporating some of the usage of AI in my class this semester. So, I couldn't do a radical change of the course. I don't intend to do a radical change of the course, but I'm really talking about a very, I would say, traditional business writing and presentation course. It's asynchronous. I have upper class students in it and MBAs. And so I looked really at what I was about to do this semester and thought, where can I infuse a little bit of this? So I've told students at the beginning of the class, I've made a few videos. It's an asynchronous course, so I added a little what's hot at the end of each week. And I've been sort of bringing them along on the journey of what's going on. And I've asked them very specifically in the syllabus and in the videos not to use it unless we're in agreement that they will. So we've got sort of a deal going on, and we'll see how well that goes. So far, so good. And I'm incorporating it in 3 ways, in again, classic assignments that I had been giving. So one of, I have students do a briefing, talking points, no PowerPoint, and they create a virtual briefing for a team on a business communication topic that they pose to me. And so they might be talking about Microsoft Teams in industry, in accounting. They might be talking whatever they choose to talk about. In that, what I am asking them to do is to use AI to help them organize the briefing. One of the things that's pretty easy to do, and it's what Abram was talking about at one particular level, which is just to, or actually, yeah, I think it was Abram, might have been Lance, just talking about the baseline of finding out information. So of course, ChatGPT isn't going to deliver it. And what I care about is the delivery in this particular case. So I'm allowing them to use the tool to help them organize the material. And then to back up what they're going to say with standard citations of where they found that information. So that's one way of, in the pre-writing, or in this case, the pre-presentation, I want them to work on it. The second thing is every semester, I have an assignment where I ask, I sort of create a fictional company. It's a little bit of a case, and the CEO of a small company starts getting worried about whatever is new, and it might be quiet quitting. It was last semester. This semester, it's the use of AI in writing. And what I have students do is go out and do an investigative report, that they produce a memo with an investigative report on that. And the topic this time will be a manager very worried about the use of ChatGPT, trying to understand its usage, its strengths and weaknesses. And I'm going to ask students to actually do an evaluation of a piece that they get from AI to inform the manager of the pros and cons. So I'm taking an investigative report, overlaying that with the topic to be ChatGPT. Then the last thing I'm going to do is I do have students writing a very brief memo. I'm not going to tell them in advance about this, but after they write it, I'm going to give them an assessment of it, and then I'm going to have them put that same prompt into ChatGPT and evaluate the differences between what they learned, what I taught them, how I evaluated it, and I'm going to put myself open there and what ChatGPT does with it. So it's kind of the Wild West, but I'm ready.
I'm also kind of sprinkling in a few activities throughout my course this semester. And like Rita, I'm kind of looking at the organization. How can students use this in a positive way? I'm taking a series of activities and implementing them within assignments. So as Lance mentioned, one related to sourcing data, and I have to give Amy credit for this because we were talking back and forth about ideas. Looking at students to come in if they're creating kind of a logical argument. So seeing if their claims are in the order of that ChatGPT spits out. Is it a logical argument? Is it a mini argument? And one thing that I'm actually having students do is I'm having them turn in all of their queries with their assignments. So showing, okay, what if they're making recommendations or they're changing things from, say, their original ideas, I want to see why they're changing it, and then having them give an explanation for why they're changing it, and acknowledging if ChatGPT was helpful or not. I'm not making that part of requirement because I also have realized that there are some students that don't want to use it. And so that's a way just to kind of get them a taste of this, as well as using something later on. I haven't done this yet, but with data visualization and looking at charts and thinking about, okay, how how is the chart and the data visualization compared to what is ChatGPT recommending versus what they're coming up with, and so on. And the last kind of idea right now, I have students do what I call topics of the week. And they come in and they deliver kind of just a brief topic of the week, just to get them practicing their presentation skills and lessening that speaking anxiety or energy within their presentations. And what I'm going to do at the end of the semester is, after all the topics of the week are completed, I'm going to have them put their topics of the week into ChatGPT to see, okay, what did they get right? What did ChatGPT get right? What did they miss? And kind of looking at the comparison there with those ideas. So those are three things that I'm toying with this semester. A couple other little minor things, but hopefully have more to share with you in October.
Abram, if I could point you to the chat where Laura asked a question about, you had mentioned something about resources using ChatGPT with non-native speakers.
Thank you. Yes. I am not aware immediately of any resources myself, but in our program here at Iowa State, we have a rather large applied linguistics program, and one of my colleagues, Jim Rinaldi, is running our English placement testing program for all of our international students. So this is something he's really acutely interested in. And one of the things he pointed out that seems astonishing is that the tool not only can it help those types of students improve their work, but they can actually have it go back and reintroduce errors. So they can have it write an essay and then rewrite it at the level of a second-year ESL student. So he's very concerned about academic integrity, but also really excited about the potential. One of the things that he's thinking about doing is exploring how people in international context, especially where they're teaching English, how are their students using the tools, and how are their teachers working with them using the tools? So I think it's a wide open area.
Great. I will move on and talk about how we could use ChatGPT for faculty support. And I've been having some conversations myself the last couple of weeks. I see the question in the chat, does please add any value? Not that I know of. If my colleagues feel differently, please jump in. And honestly, it's been a little bit hard for me to interact and not use those kinds of niceties. But I'll share some of what I've been conversing with. So first I was focusing on in-class activities, and I asked for some help in teaching a service learning class, and I was trying to trip it up. I said, you want students to apply the asset-based community development model to how they might approach an introductory meeting with a community partner, what in-class activities would prepare them. I got some pretty good ideas, I have to say. And just as Abram is saying, I see that it's all in the prompt, and I need to get better at that. But I was trying to drill down a little bit, and I chose one of the examples on reflection. And I said, can you create a handout? Of course, it's not going to do anything visual, but it gave me some good questions. I asked for questions for a think, pair, share activity in class, and it knows what that is. So that was helpful. I asked for more specific questions, assuming that the community partner was big brothers, big sisters, and really not bad, focusing on students' own mentorship experience and youth development. And then I said, these questions can get kind of personal. What kind of precautions should I take to prepare for the discussion? And some basic, but I thought good advice there also. So I present this just to encourage you. I was treating ChatGPT like a colleague and asking for advice. And I think particularly for some new faculty who are just preparing lesson plans on some topics for the first time, this could be really useful. I also moved on to rubrics. I said, you're a faculty member teaching a first-year undergraduate business class, create a rubric. And I just gave this one-liner for an assignment. I asked for detailed criteria and sub-criteria. And you could see here too, it offered quite a bit. Not exactly what I would ask for. We might focus more on organizational strategy, and that a lot is allocated here to a conclusion. We might say, well, we want some of that in the introduction. We might specify that, but I found this very useful. And then I learned that you can ask for a table format. So here we go, and by the way, for this one, I said, give me the rubric with these rating categories. And you don't see it here, but I pasted in a 2-page assignment that was kind of complex. It's a team assignment. It has both oral and written components to it. And, boom. Again, not perfect. But one thing I did learn from this experience is, for example, if you see this last column here, it emphasizes demonstration of equitable workload. And this wasn't my assignment. I went back and looked at the assignment. I was I thought it was kind of strange that it would emphasize that. And I think in the assignment, it is overemphasized. So I could see using this as a tool to refine our assignments and see what are we really trying to look for. I might, of course, and some of you probably do this in your own pedagogy, to start with the rubric and get that squared away with some help from ChatGPT, and then back into the assignment. So I was very encouraged by this and thinking about how it might help me clarify my own thinking. I don't want to say much about it because I think it's still early days, but at some point we're going to have a conversation about using this for grading. And there are specific AI grading tools. I don't know much about them yet. I want to learn more. I've seen faculty get highly criticized for using ChatGPT. It will write very lovely, helpful comments to students. And just as Abram was saying, you can instruct it around tone, and you can say, be encouraging, be nice, and it'll do a pretty good job and sound quite human. So I think we need to think more about how that fits into our relationship with students, obviously the ethics behind that, and also what students might use it for as well, for drafts. And yeah. So I will leave it there. But while I'm thinking about it, I did want to let you all know that there's a ABC Innovation in Teaching with Technology Award that I happen to sponsor, and we would love to see more submissions every year for this award. So if you're using AI in creative ways, please nominate yourself or get someone else to nominate you. Look at Lance.
All right, thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about things I've been thinking through with syllabus language. Feel free to, if you have syllabus language for AI yet, if you want to share it in the chat, feel free. But I'm just going to share you some of my thoughts. So one of the things I've been thinking about is basically what feeds into our attitudes towards AI. As you all have known, or have you experienced, there's lots of conversations going on, lots of different points of views, arguments about plagiarism, that kind of thing. And really one of the things I realized is something that's going on in that is that we all have a different mindset, a bit different belief about how technology and writing and reality and language all mix together. And that has to be, I think, clear in our syllabus for students. We're used to it with writing because there's lots of different attitudes towards writing. And the more explicit we are about those, the better our students can adapt to our assignments in different classes. And the same is going to be for AI. They're going to encounter lots of different attitudes towards AI, especially right now when it's still developing. And so I created this kind of heuristic to start thinking about, well, what exactly is, my personal mindset, and how can I communicate that to students so that they know why I'm assigning AI the way that I am assigning it, or why I have this particular policy. So basically, you'll notice a lot of conversations between kind of a humanist perspective and a technologist perspective. And this is a humanist kind of sees AI as a detriment, right? And I'm not saying any of these are necessarily bad or good perspectives. Technologists will tend towards seeing AI as a tool. I think you're seeing a lot of technologist conversations in this panel. I have a third one here, which is a post-humanist, which would think about how that it can do both hinder and enhance our capacity to learn. And the learning and the writing happens in the interaction between technology. And that's kind of how I've constructed my materials. But then once you kind of have an idea, you can look at your policy if you have one written and think, okay, what mindset am I projecting in this syllabus language? And then you kind of have to decide, will you allow generated text in your assignments? That's one major question. There's actually lots of different ways. There's not just generate text or not generate text. There's different ways of generating text. There's different ways of using generated text. And then will you allow AI assistance? And this is using AI as a brainstorming tool, asking for help, asking it like a tutor. And I see these as kind of default. You want to set your default settings in your syllabus. This is what I think about generated text and AI assistance, unless stated otherwise. I see them as kind of toggles that you can switch off and on, though, for different assignments. So I kind of, and you can, I'm not going to go through all of this because we don't have time, but I can share the link here in a second, but you can kind of go through this and say you've decided you're kind of taking a humanist stance on here. Here are some of the possible language that you could put in your syllabus to make sure that it's clear to students, why you are setting the parameters the way that you're setting them. And at the bottom here, this is from a website that's compiled in our materials that kind of gives you another heuristic to think about. And I think this is a lot from a humanist point of view here. And then this is my actual policy here. So I'm teaching storytelling, and so it's a little bit more creative. And I'm actually we're not using ChatGPT. We're using an actual AI writing tool. I don't think I would consider ChatGPT as a writing tool. It's a text generator. You don't actually write in it. I mean, you kind of can, but and you can produce writing from it. But we're practicing writing stories and using AI to enhance and interact with our own writing. For example, this is one that to think about is when generating text, I prefer that they generate multiple iterations and not a lot of words. And actually, this works best for me when I'm using it because it's supposed to give you more ideas, help you think of connections, not necessarily take over your writing, especially when you're telling stories. I mean, I think most students, when they're telling a story, they want to tell their story. Also, the AI is not that great at telling stories, even with master prompts. But and then this is what I mean here. This is an example. So I would ask it, okay, I'm not sure what to write next. Generate 3 options, and then I could use, you can insert or copy these, but I actually ask students, and I actually do this myself, I ask students to, if you're going to use generated text in your writing, actually hand type it into your text. Because what you see is probably not as good as you think it is. I call that AI goggles. Everything looks amazing when it's coming out of an AI. And also it helps you think about how it really, for real, integrates in your writing rather than taking over your writing for you. And I think that's a important ability to do, especially as they are learning to write on their own. And so that's kind of my default, and I'm just rolling it out now. So you can talk to me later to see how it goes. But I see those as kind of toggles. So I've created these badges to let students know what's acceptable for what assignment. First 2 weeks we did AI free. That's this little guy right here with just a human brain. We did all our assignments without using AI because I wanted to explore the invention process with them without using AI. AI assisted is this one. here they can generate, 3 generations of 50 words, for example. And the robot here is they can use AI however they want. And, most of the time I would ask them too, how did you use it? And that kind of thing. So, so really thinking about AI as I think the default is going to be students are going to use AI. So we have to be explicit when we want them to use it in a certain way or a different way. Just like now, if I want students to write their story using a pencil, I'm going to have to tell them to do it because, and why, why in the world do you want me to write it with a pencil? I'm going to have to tell them, that I want to do it. I'm going to have to explain reasons why. And then pretty soon that's going to be the case, I think, with AI. So with that, I think we're going to move into the Q&A.
We are. My brain feels like that screenshot you had, Lance, of that psychedelic, like lights flashing off and on, because I can hardly keep up. So much is going on in my own mind, which means I'm sure that the people in our gallery may have some questions they'd like to put to our panelists. I know that our chat, our real Zoom chat, real time, is on fire with lots of great ideas and suggestions. So over to the gallery. If someone has a question they want to put in the chat, that might be the more efficient way, or you can turn on your mic. Could try that. There's a lot of people in the gallery, so we'll try to be efficient about it.
Abram, I wonder if you could, I saw that you typed into chat, but maybe talk a little bit more about the AI detection tools. It seems like a hot topic.
Yeah, there's some people who've written really well about this. The thing is that the current AI detection tools are just not very good. They're very inconsistent. They're not a basis for academic dishonesty case because they frequently get detection wrong in both directions. Sometimes they misdetect actual human writing. The other thing is that it creates a very adversarial relationship with students, and putting their work into these services is potentially an ethical issue for sharing their work and privacy. I would suggest that you can warn them about why they may not want to do that. The link that I shared by Mark Watkins, he has some really great suggestions about how you can create assignments that essentially make it hard for students to just simply take whatever ChatGPT or similar tool gives them and use them for an assignment.
Yeah, and I will say we played around with that in my class last week because I rolled out this policy, trying to communicate my ideas about technology, and they're like, well, wait, how do we prove that we didn't use AI? And so we talked a lot about AI detectors, and we put their writing in the GPT-0, which is supposedly one of the better ones, and it picked up one story that was completely AI generated, but other than that, it was wrong in every other instance.
I thought it was a very good sign, though, this week that OpenAI actually has put in something. I think they're calling it a qualifier. Am I right in that language? They should have done it from the beginning. But it also says that our input is
you're on mute.
hearing because they clearly got the rise from, I'd say, higher ed and K through 12. About having to deal with the problem. So they're trying to be sensitive now to constituents is what they've said. It's right on their website.
I would note that it's great that these services are thinking about doing watermarks, but it's also been shown that even once they do these, you can easily take the output, run it through another thing, and it will, interrupt the watermark. So foolproof detection of AI is just not ever it's always going to be a moving target. So we have to kind of find other ways to work around it.
Pete, I see that you're in the gallery, and many of us have recently completed the research survey you and your team generate. I wonder if there's anything you'd like to comment on or that resonated from the discussion you heard here today.
First thing I want to say is I love this session. It's so interesting to hear all these perspectives, and all of you put together a lot of really creative ideas. So kudos to you. The survey, we just wrapped it up on Friday. So I don't think we have too much to report yet. We have 331 responses, which means we've got lots of great ideas, and people wrote a lot of stuff in the open-ended comments as well. But we will certainly share that as soon as we can. But I can say this, like, one thing that's very interesting is, people have all levels of, some people are really positive. Some people have a lot of anxiety over this. There's a wide range of reactions, and all of it's legitimate. But we'll kind of share out summary results as soon as we can.
Thank you, Pete. Amy, did you want me to maybe comment on just some general themes that surfaced today?
That would be great if you could do a summary for us, Valerie. Thanks.
Amy kindly invited me to do a little summary, and I feel a bit overwhelmed actually, because there have been so many fascinating threads, but I'll do my best here. One thing I was really impressed by was beginning with a little snapshot of business history. So thank you for that, Christy, just to get us oriented and started. I mean, that this started as early as 1955, that these discussions were there, I think is marvelous. And here we are in 2023 having these conversations. I also was one of those people who is very much surrounded by people who've been talking about the negative aspects. And so I feel like, JD, I saw your comment in the chat that this was such a positive, upbeat, really looking at the possibilities. I agree. ChatGPT is a major disruptor, possibly in a very positive way. It's not going away. We need to learn how to work with it, explore it. And Abram and Lance have done a marvelous job of giving us just a sampling of great resources we can explore together, and also think about how we can create assignments. And Christy and Rita also have touched on that as well. Abram, I really envy your students at Iowa State. I would love to take that course. I am going to be on sabbatical in a couple of years. Maybe I will be one of the students in your classes. Amy's comments really reminded me of how this could actually be a collaborator, someone who could help improve not just the teaching of junior colleagues and scholars, but also established ones who could probably use a refresh. And I'm beginning to think too, it didn't come up in the discussion today, but I do know of people working in the art world who have these crit bots and using ChatGPT to peer evaluate work, which is making me wonder to what extent peer reviewers maybe we'll be using ChatGPT to peer review our academic work. And I kind of like the idea that people won't be writing angry or unpleasant critiques of my work when I send it out, because someone had said, ChatGPT will not make negative, hateful comments. So it might teach us something about how to critique other people's work as well. And so I just really enjoyed the positivity of this session. And what it is also highlighting for us is that the Denver, Colorado conference, I'm not sure if Nancy Mahan is still on the call here, but I can just imagine all the wonderful proposals she's going to be receiving this year. She and Leslie Seawright, who's co-chairing the session in Denver on the subject of pedagogy, on the subject of research. And Pete, I did the survey. I got the little nudge reminder. And based on some of the questions I saw in your team survey, I could really see that it's the deep learning piece, the focus on process of business communication educators that's really going to be enhanced by these discussions. We often give process short shrift, I'd say, but this is really going to encourage us to unpack the process from invention to revision, as Abram had pointed out in his presentation. And I think everyone has the potential to become more adept, both as business educators and communicators as a result. So thank you, everyone, for the great work you did in assembling the session and also participating and joining us. I think this is the most global audience we have had as part of one of these 1-hour sessions. So thank you, everyone.